Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a very momentous occasion for me. I'm really humbled and excited to give a talk directly on a sutta that is given by the Buddha. Now, for all of us who are on this path, the path of the Dhamma, we start our path by learning mindfulness meditation, right? We learn mindfulness meditation and then we expand our knowledge base. We learn something about the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Noble Path, five aggregates, right? Uh, our understanding grows. We quickly realize that Buddha was actually a list maker, right? He used to make lists, hundreds of lists. And we also realize that those lists are not static. They are very, 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 very vibrant. And each and every element of those lists are interconnected with other elements in other lists. All right. So it's very dynamic um, in ways that we can uh, only begin to kind of realize. And the more we study, the more we make those interconnections ourselves. And then when we start listening to the suttas, to all the discourses that Buddha himself gave, then those interconnections become live. And we quickly realize that the number of interconnections are literally infinite. When Buddha gave talks, when Buddha answered questions from people, he made those interconnections freely. And so when we listen to any given sutta, we will have many light bulb moments. Oh my God, he's talking about this, he's talking about that. And he's linking everything together. And then we learn to have different perspectives on the same list, you know. So and it'll become more important, it'll become apparent as I go along. Now most of the suttas, were given by Buddha, and they were transcribed by some of his closest disciples, like Sariputta, for example. Sariputta and Ananda, they were his closest disciples, and they transcribed it. And when it came directly from the Buddha, those suttas start with the word, thus have I heard. So when you reading a sutta, when you see this phrase, thus have I heard, it's a sign that all the instructions came directly from the Buddha. And Buddha used repetition. He used repetition in a very poetic way because he knew that repetition is a mnemonic device. And if something is repeated often, it sticks into our brain and into our minds and into our memories, right? And we see examples of this being used by politicians, right? They keep repeating certain phrases again and again and again, and then it jolts people out, right? Jolts people out to take some action. But from Buddha's perspective, his goal in using repetition was to evoke a sense of gratefulness, a sense of gratitude and loving kindness, and a sense of tranquility for these kind of teachings. So that was the reason why he used repetition. And then after his passing, the monastics, it was very easy for them to take these suttas and then create chants because there was already a poetic structure to them, and they just added some lyrics to it. So when you see chantings, and when you hear monks chanting suttas, it is an opportunity for us to revisit the entire teaching that is contained in that sutta. And you will see very quickly that any given sutta will have a variety of teachings condensed in it. Okay, so that's the reason why I find direct study of suttas so enriching. It really refreshes, re, yeah, it refreshes my understanding of Buddhist teachings, and it inspires me to go even deeper, into the study of the suttas and also do my own practice so that I can get those kind of insights, you know. All right. So now These suttas are organized. So there are three main collection of suttas. So one is called the Digha Nikaya. It's called collection of long discourses, and these are lengthy and detailed suttas that cover a wide range of topics. They cover like cosmology, they cover psychology, they cover practices related to meditation, and they also cover comparison of Buddha's teachings with other teachings. He had long drawn out conversations with religious leaders and ascetics of that day, and those are all contained in those suttas in Digha Nikaya. So in that collection, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta is one of the most prominent. Mahaparinibbana means this, the last sutta that Buddha gave before he passed. So Buddha was in his, deathbed, so to speak, and yet he spent that time giving discourses. And so Mahaparinibbana is a very long, expansive discourse on his entire teachings, right? So that's an example of one sutta that's in that Digha Nikaya collection, right? Then you have the Majjhima Nikaya collection. Majjhima Nikaya means middle length discourses, right? Now, these are moderately sized suttas, and they are focused on practical teachings and guidance that Buddha gave. And in those suttas, we can study those suttas to get even more inspiration for the practice, right? So, Bhai Bhairava Sutta that I'm going to talk about today is actually present in Majjhima Nikaya collection. And another sutta is the Satipatthana Sutta, the sutta on the establishment of the four foundation of mindfulness. That sutta is in Majjhima Nikaya collection. And then there is a third collection called Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya is a collection of collected discourses. So these are suttas that are organized thematically into 56 groups. Those groups are called samyuttas. Now each group is focused on a particular topic. So there are these group of suttas on a topic called dependent origination. Then there's a group on topic of just the practice of mindfulness and on four noble truths, etc. Right? And so in this Nikaya, the Anatta Lakhana Sutta, the sutta on the discourse of the characteristics of not self, is in this collection. So now you are wide open to so many suttas. It'll take a lifetime of study to study those things. But it's also very exciting because there is so much to explore. With mindfulness, when we're introduced to mindfulness and we have some amazing experience, right? It's like we found a small puddle of water and we are jumping on it with our dogs and we're enjoying ourselves. And then somebody tells us that, hey, walk with me for a block. And then they take us to this beach where you see the whole ocean. And we are told that, hey, listen, this don't jump in the puddle, jump in the ocean. There's so much more water, so much more excitement to be had, right? So that is the sense that, if you approach these suttas and these collections, right, that's the sense that you should have. One of excitement, and also one of gratitude that, yes, you have had the good fortune to be exposed to these teachings, and every time you listen to the suttas, your understanding is deepened. You have even more insights into your practice, and that kind of powers your practice. So it's a beautiful journey. It's a journey that keeps on giving. It starts giving at the beginning, it gives in the middle, and it gives in the end. Yeah. All right. So that's a nice introduction. Are there any questions from anyone? Any questions from anyone on Zoom on what I've just said? Oh,
Yes.
Margaret, you have a question. Yes.
Well, and then there's the Anguttara Nikaya as well.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Margaret. So her
Yes,
question is that there is another collection called Anguttara Nikaya. Yes, Margaret, I I didn't want to go into detail because
that's okay.
Anguttara Nikaya is designed differently. So they're like numbered collection. It's a bit complex, and I didn't want to go into it. I didn't
Sure.
want to go.
Okay.
But thank you. I'm so impressed that you were able to kind of
Well,
point
that's
this out.
okay. That's all right. Thank
Thank you.
you. Uh,
All right. So now I'm coming to our discourse on by Bhairava Sutta. So that's the sutta for the day today, right? Um, A monk came to Buddha, and said that, and I'll recite some verses directly from the sutta. He was talking about practice. Buddha recommended people to go out into the forest and practice meditation, because out in the forest you are not bombarded by sense distractions. You can abide peacefully and you can then go deeper into meditation, right? And incidentally, the Thai forest tradition was created just to fulfill Buddha's instructions, right? So these monks in Thailand, they would go deep into the forest and they would have a very simple life. They could eat whatever they found. They would go into the villages for alms, whatever they received, they would eat. But the goal was to go into the forest and meditate. But then this monk came to him and said, "But Master Gautama, remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. They summon unskillful fear and dread. One would think the jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration." So the question was, yeah, what you say is good, but when people go to jungle, thicket, forest, resting places, it's difficult to meditate simply because you have so much fear and dread. Now, I want to take a moment to explain the relevance of this sutta. All right, the question is about fear and dread and what to do if we are in the situation where we encounter fear and dread. This sutta is very, very relevant because we face situations of fear and dread all the time. I can give you my example. 15 years ago, I was working for a healthcare organization, right? It was a for-profit healthcare organization, and they were not doing good in the marketplace. They were losing a lot of money. So we all knew that there were going to be cuts, right? One morning, we got an email. Like in 15 minutes, we were summoned to attend a meeting that was chaired by a vice president at that time. And at that time, we were all working in the offices, right? So when I walked into the conference room, massive conference room, I walked in with fear and dread in my heart that I could lose my job. I sat there. We waited for maybe 5-10 minutes, but that seemed like an eternity. I looked around, everybody. I recognized a lot of people in my team. I recognized my own manager. They were all in the call, and no one talked to another. Everybody had that experience of fear and dread. And then, it was like a telephone call through Polycom device at that time that started to crackle. And then our vice president, she came on the line and she said, if you are present in on this call, she was in California and there were a lot of other offices. I was in Portland. She said, if you are in this call, that means your job is safe. And immediately we like, but a lot of us have the same experience. Let's say if we have to go into the hospital, right? When we go to the hospital, we are attacked by fear and dread. One, because we fear that we might have some condition that might limit our lives. But then we also worry about the medical bill that will come to us after we get treated. In fact, sometimes that creates more fear and dread, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that this sutta and other suttas have relevance in our day-to-day lives. When I walked in the conference room 15 years ago, I was not aware of this sutta. I was barely familiar with Buddhist teachings, but I did not have any skillful way of dealing with that fear and sutta, with fear and dread. Now I have some skillful means to do so. And basically, so what I wanted to say is that please understand, if you are reviewing this sutta or any other sutta, it's very, very relevant to our lives today. Yeah.
May I ask which number this was?
Number four. I think it's number four, Majjhima Nikaya Sutta. Yes. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, all these suttas are numbered also. All right. So then the Buddha answered to that question. Okay, now coming back to the question. But Master Gautama, remote thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. They summon unskillful fear and dread. One would think that the jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. Buddha replied, that is so, Brahmin, that is so. Remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. One would think the jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. So, with this answer, Buddha did not look down upon the questioner. He totally understood that yes, when you go into this jungle, thicket, forest resting places, it is quite natural to have fear and dread. And this is something that you'll find in all the suttas. He was able to relate to the question. He never said that, hey, you're doing something wrong or you're not up to it, whatever. He totally understood the question. He relayed the question back and then he gave his answer. He said that before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too considered thus. Remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. The jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. And then he gave the answer and he gave a number of uh, recommendations for dealing with fear and dread. And these are recommendations that we can apply to our lives today as well. So he said, whenever bhikkhus are covetous and full of lust, I am uncovetousness. Right? So basically, he was saying that fear and dread arises when there is a lot of covetousness in our mind. Right? And I don't know about you, but I can relate to that. When I have a desire, any kind of desire, sensual desire, desire of flesh or desire of food or something, underneath the desire, there's always some fear, there's always some anger lurking. Um, I've noticed that sometimes. And the fear is that what if I'm not able to consume? What if I'm not able to fulfill that desire? Or what if that object of desire is taken away from me? You see? So that's where this this recommendation comes from, that whenever bhikkhus are covetous and full of lust, I'm uncovetous. So remove that covetous behavior. That will lead to purification. Whenever bhikkhus have a mind of ill will and intentions of hate, I have a mind of loving kindness. So convert hate and ill will into loving kindness, and that will reduce the fear and dread in you. Whenever bhikkhus are overcome by sloth and torpor, I am without sloth and torpor. You know, reduce sloth, reduce torpor, and you'll you'll be able to manage fear and dread. Whenever bhikkhus are overcome with restlessness and unpeaceful in mind, I have a peaceful mind. If your mind is peaceful, then the fear and dread experience will not be that intense. Whenever bhikkhus are uncertain and doubting, I have gone beyond doubt. Whenever bhikkhus are given to self praise and disparagement of others, I am not given to self praise and disparagement of others. Whenever bhikkhus are subject to alarm and terror, I am free from trepidation. Wherever bhikkhus are desirous of gain, honor, and renown, I have few wishes. Whenever bhikkhus are lazy and wanting in energy, I am energetic. Wherever bhikkhus are unskillful, unmindful, and not fully aware, I am established in mindfulness. Whenever bhikkhus are unconcentrated and have straying minds, I am possessed of concentration. So these are the recommendations that he gave. And in these recommendations, you quickly see the list elements that I was talking about, right? So when he's talking about loving kindness, that is Brahma Vihara, right? When he's talking about sloth and torpor, he's talking about one of the five hindrances, you see? And then when he's talking about developing mindfulness and concentration and energy, those are three of the seven factors of enlightenment. You see? So we are, as beginners, we are familiar with this list. But then when we look at this answer that Buddha gave, now we make those corrections. Oh my God, loving kindness. Yes, when we practice loving kindness, we open our heart, right? We cultivate love and kindness and gratitude for others. But now, doing so will reduce our fear and dread of whatever it is happening, right? Now, you got to understand that in all these sutras, when these questions were asked of Buddha, Buddha kept it real, you know. He never said that, oh, it's all imaginary, it's all in our minds, right? So the recommendations that he gave are very, very practical, right? So, and you might have that experience that, you are going into some situation where there is fear, where there's anxiety. If you practice loving kindness, beforehand, you'll find a certain sense of ease, a certain sense of lightness, and that will help you deal with the situation better, no matter what the outcome is, right? But the idea is that these situations are very, very real. We are bound to encounter issues that will inculcate fear and dread in us. So those are the responses he gave. Those are the recommendations that he gave to reduce fear and dread. All right. And then he said that the more virtues you have, the less attached you are to the sense of self. And that's a very important statement. According to him, our defilements, the defilements that he lists, like ill will, intention of hate, sloth and torpor, restlessness, doubting, those defilements are linked to our strength, our sense of self. The moment, when you think of your sense of self and dissociate yourself from others, those defilements are bound to arise. So then when you cultivate the sense of not self, when your sense of self is relaxed, then immediately some of these defilements fall away, right? And now you come to the teaching of not self, anatta. You see, anatta as a concept is extremely difficult to understand. It's not intuitive at all, right? What do you mean by not self? What does it mean, right? But here it just means that the more attached we are to our sense of self, to our belongings, to our relationships, the more defilements will arise. Because now there is this fear that, oh, I might lose this. There's a fear that I might not have, or I might not be happy with what I have. You see? So at the end of the day, he says that the defilements arise from this sense of self. And then he talks about the consequences of overcoming the defilements. So he gave these recommendations, right? And then he said that once you have the antidotes to all these defilements, like the antidotes means uncovetousness, loving kindness, not having sloth and torpor, having a peaceful mind, those attributes will cultivate a sense of tranquility inside of you, and you will be able to develop your power of concentration. And the concentration, or after having this concentration, when you do your meditation, you will reach the goal of samadhi quickly. You see, you'll get to that stage of enlightenment quickly. So, and in that concentration, he talks about the jhana states, right? The four jhana states um, that we read about in a separate list, correct? So he talks about the jhana list in this sutta also, that when you go deep into meditation, when you have all these attributes, not only will your sense of fear and dread reduce, but your sense of concentration, your sense of uh, this the state of mind that comes with this practice of mindfulness will be intense, and that will also help you deal with fear and dread. Does it make sense? I just want to pause here. Do you have any questions on what I've said so far? You or anybody on Zoom? Okay, all right. So basically, looking at okay, let me just talk about uh, the uh, the end, the last part of his answer to the sutta, right? That's part of the sutta. So basically, he said that when you have fear and dread, you live a blameless life. So there is this importance of ethical conduct for so living blamelessly, free from harmful actions that hurt others. He also talked about encountering fear and dread. So what happens when you actually encounter fear and dread? And he said that when he encountered fear and dread, he would just sit and observe the fear and dread, how it manifests in the body till it went away. Now, this might seem like an allegory that, oh, if fear and dread, if I said how will it go away? But now we know with these, with neuroscience and with other scientific studies that I've done, if we are able to observe any emotions within us, what happens is a part of us that is observing is dissociated from the experience. So, whatever that unpleasant experience might be, the part that is observing will be free of it. And the part that is observing, that part, if it goes deeper into concentration, deeper into this witnessing mode, more and more energy will come to this witnessing part and less will be felt in the body. You see? So, there's a very scientific principle of observing fear and dread to the point that it goes away. So that's what Buddha said, that that's how he would practice this mindfulness practice. He would become fully conscious of it till it would go away. And then he talked about um, abandoning sensual desires. He said that the more sensual desires we have, the more fear and dread we will face. Or if you're facing an already, if you're facing a situation that already has elements of fear and dread, our sensual desires will make our experience worse. Basically, that's what he was saying. And then developing deep concentration. So if you have those attributes of mind that he listed, you'll be able to develop deep concentration. That concentration will allow people to achieve more mental clarity and tranquility. And that itself will help deal with fear and dread. And then he said, by final victory over fear, by purifying our minds, by practicing mindfulness, confronting fears directly, we will ultimately become fearless. So that is the end goal of being ultimately fearless. But where we are right now as students on the path, we have ways to mitigate situations that arouse fear and dread inside of us. And then he talked about, he ended the answer by talking about three knowledges that he received from the practice of deep concentration. He said, the first knowledge, when my mind had become immersed in samadhi like this, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable, I extended it towards recollection of past lives. You know, um, Second knowledge, when my mind had become immersed in samadhi like this, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruption, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable, I extended it towards knowledge of the death and rebirth of sentient beings. And third and final knowledge, right? When my mind had become immersed in samadhi like this, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable, I extended it towards knowledge of the ending of defilements. This is the experience of awakening that is the true goal of the Buddhist path. The defilements, properties of the mind that create suffering, have been curbed by the practice of ethics and suppressed by the power of jhana. They're eliminated forever. So I truly understood this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. And this is the practice that leads to the cessation of all suffering. So basically, he ended the sutta by reciting the Four Noble Truths. You know, it's so beautiful, right? He comes back full circle. So he not only answered the question, but he gave recommendations for how to deal with the situation. And then he ended with with a brief exposition of the Four Noble Truths. It's so beautiful, right? So, so what do we learn from this sutta, right? That's very important, right? Because, like I said, these suttas are very, very relevant. So, what I have learned from this sutta is that yes, I have continued to experience situations that created fear and dread in me, but it has prompted me to double down on go deeper into the teachings because the moment I look to the teachings, I realized that oh wow, this is not the end. This is not permanent. This is impermanent. This is also change, right? That is the first one of the three marks of existence, right? Anicca, right? Anicca. And then there is the sense of this not self. I realize that yes, I'm getting fear and dread simply because I'm too attached to the outcome. I'm too attached to my sense of self. I don't want that sense to be affected in any way. That realization itself creates a little bit of an opening, creates a little bit of relief, right? And then, when you look at dukkha, for example, yeah, life is dukkha. These situations are bound to arise. So there are many, many aspects of teaching. And of course, when I do loving kindness, I mean, there have been many times when I have disturbed sleep. And I've shared with the Dhamma here that, I have a history of chronic traumatic childhood experiences and I've had to deal with complex PTSD my entire adult life. And it springs up, you know, unexpectedly, right? So many times when it happens in the middle of the night, I just wake up in a cold sweat, right? So then when I do loving kindness practice, and there's some amazingly beautiful guided loving kindness meditation, right? When I do the loving kindness meditations, I am at ease. I'm able to deal with whatever has happened, and I'm able to glide back into sleep. So these recommendations that Buddha has given are very, very therapeutic. You only have to try it to see how powerful they are, how effective they are in dealing with these kind of defilements, these kind of situations. So again, going back to the entire list, there are so he in that sutta he has given so many different answers, right? Developing uncovetousness, right? Developing loving kindness, not having sloth and torpor, right? Having a peaceful mind, going beyond doubt. By doubt, he means doubt in the teachings, right? It's one of the poisons. Not given into self-praise and disparagement of others, free from trepidation, having few wishes. Means here he's talking about letting go. We are full of desires, we're full of ambition, we're full of wants and needs. But if you're able to let go, we are able to live a life of ease. You know, uh, cultivate mindfulness, concentration that gives you energy. So those are all the specific recommendations that he gives. And when we implement those, we find ourselves in a state of mind that allows us to practice mindfulness simply because we have developed a sense of tranquility and clarity. It improves our sense of concentration. We're able to practice mindfulness. We're able to go deeper, and we're able to achieve that state called samadhi. Now, samadhi is not. there are many ways to interpret what samadhi means in this sutta, but samadhi means like you have achieved um, a breakthrough, so to speak. You're going through this experience, you're doing these practices, and then you have a breakthrough that you have your aha moment. Oh, now I'm free. Or you understand something about your own situation that that lets the fear and dread experience go away. That is samadhi. You know. So if you look to samadhi as a momentary, it's like a peak experience. Samadhi is like a peak experience that allows you to become free of the situation that creates fear and dread. So that is all there is to it with this sutta on fear and dread. Thank you. I mean, I get so excited just by going through all this and talking about it. So thank you for listening. Now, are there any questions? Uh, yeah, Margaret, do you have any question?
Well, it's not so much a question, but I too get excited about the Dhamma teachings, and if you ever do an online sutta study, you let me know because I would love to be part of that. There is a particular sutta, if you don't mind, that reaches me as well. It's There's one where a disciple is asking questions or making reference to the defilements in other people. And the Buddha responds by saying, "How could it be otherwise?" And he says that over and over and over
Yes.
again. And
Yes.
to me, that's a beautiful reflection of karma.
Yes.
The causes and conditions. How could it be otherwise?
Yes.
That simple phrase is so beautiful to me, and it makes so much sense because
Yes. Exactly.
there's so much truth in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah. So I don't have any plans for an online sutta class. The only constraint I have is time.
Yeah, yeah,
It may sound like an excuse, but I have a full-time job, a demanding job where I
yes,
have to sometimes work weekends and stuff.
yes.
And if I won the lottery, that's my
There
ticket
you
to
go.
nirvana.
There you
And
go.
only like $2 million. That's it. I just need $2 million. And then I'll be all set. You know. See, I'm not greedy. but but yeah. So um, sometimes it creates a little bit of discontent inside of me that I have before me all this amazing information, all these amazing resources to kind of peruse, and I'm held back simply because of lack of time, because I have to provide for my family. See, this is where the sense of self uh, interferes.
Yes.
You have to be very wise to it. I cannot say that, what, I'll leave my job. I don't care about my family. Let my family suffer. I'll just do my meditation. But that's not skillful. I cannot let go of my duties to provide for my family. I have to do what I have to do, right? And then when I have time, when I have sufficient a state of mind where I'm able to practice, then I practice. Many times when I do my meditation, I fall asleep. And this is true for many of us, right? It's even true of monastics, right? When monastics, when monks, when they practice day in and day out, there are many times when they fall asleep, and it's okay. So so that's my concern. I'm yeah, it's I have to deal with it, I have to deal with it skillfully,
Yes, yes, and I understand completely. Completely. I just want to say, I think it's important that you hold it in your heart, though.
Yeah.
You have responsibilities, but you hold it in your heart because you cannot be happy unless continue with the practice as well. So,
Yes, and then of course, I mean, it's not white and black. I mean, a lot of the practices they seep into our work
yeah,
activity also.
yeah,
So when you're
yeah,
doing your work, you're doing it with a sense of gratitude, with a sense of
yes,
thankfulness, right?
Yes.
So you show up at work in a very different way,
Mm-hmm.
and then people will recognize you, that they'll recognize, oh, you are bringing your authentic self to work, and that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I like. I get this many times from people that I work with. They really enjoy working with me, and
Mm-hmm.
they tell me that, oh, Alpesh, can we work together on another project?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask my manager to have you on my another project also? And I said, sure, so be
The
it.
Dhamma is transformative.
It's transformative,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you, Margaret. Yeah. So again, the goal of my talk today was to take one sutta, the Bhai Bhairava Sutta, and to instill in you the motivation to check out and to review other suttas also. There's a whole world of suttas that remains to be explored, and there's one amazing website, paliaudio.com, Pali Audio, where you'll find these suttas, the suttas in the chant version, and also the commentary in English. And this commentary has been provided by really well-known Buddhist monks, like Bhikkhu Bodhi, for example, right? Bhikkhu Bodhi and others, and Thanisaro Bhikkhu. They have all taken some of these suttas and they have all expounded, they have all given lectures on it. And you can download the entire audio lectures. So you'll find the actual discourse in English. Hold on. I'm not sure if you'll find the actual discourse, but you'll find the commentary and you'll find the chant version of the sutta. So, all right, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. So we'll take a short break and then we'll come back and we'll do some meditation.